I always get very excited when great authors come into the studio, and that is why I'm excited now, because you will know our guest today from her debut novel, How to Kill Your Family. I mean, the amount of times I saw people reading this book and getting raised eyebrows, looking at them going, is it a manual? No. It's just a really good crime book, and a title, as I say, that would raise an eyebrow, and it did. It became a #1 Sunday Times bestseller. It spent 47 weeks in the top 10 in paperback, and she's also the author of the Sunday Times best-selling non-fiction book Jog On. She's written for The Guardian, for Vogue and Vice. She is Bella Mackie, and you are very welcome to the top of the tower. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. Do you kind of snort a little bit when you hear those introductions?
Yeah.
Why? Well,
because it sort of sounds like someone's describing someone else, doesn't it? You sort of don't think of yourself like that. If I was walking around saying, and I'm Bella Mackie, and I'm an award-winning, best-selling, novelist,
yeah,
that would be monstrous. So yeah, it's a bit sort of, ooh.
I appreciate that. But I thought that was an Irish thing. But you to be not uncomfortable with it, but not to be able to say, the Americans would be going, yeah, sure, and more.
Yeah,
It's a different thing.
It's a different thing. I think it's definitely a British, Irish, Scottish, thing of just being quite uncomfortable with people saying nice things to you.
Praise.
Yeah.
Anyway, you better get comfortable with it, because I'm a fan of what you've done and what you do. So congratulations on your new book, which I read cover to cover, loved it. Connor outside, cover to cover, loved it. In fact, you did something great for Connor, which was he was having a bit of a drift from reading, even though he's a voracious reader. He was just having a drift, and then he said he's now fully engaged again as a direct result of What a Way to Go. So what a great result that is.
Oh, that's the top praise you could get,
Isn't
is to pull someone back into reading. Yeah.
Okay, can we have the pitch just for people who haven't read it, because it's fresh out. It's just oven baked and ready to go.
It is. It's just out the oven. It's a book. It's kind of a funny dark comedy about a terrible rich man who dies in dramatic circumstances right at the beginning of the book, and then his family are left with kind of financial ruin, reputational ruin. They're fighting over inheritance, and then in the background there is a true crime armchair enthusiast who is trying to figure out how this man died and trying to solve his murder, and kind of ruining the family's life in the process. So it's kind of, I would say it's a dark sort of satire. Yeah.
I loved how it bounced around very gently from narrator to narrator. So you have the horrible husband, the questionable wife, the god-awful children, and then the sleuth, who's the detective, who's kind of trying to figure it all out. And the sleuth this is a thing now. Let's kind of broaden it out, because we were talking about the book and Meg hadn't quite read it yet, and she was going, please stop talking about it, I'm dying to read it. So we have to be careful what we say about your book, but you've given the pitch and we've given it love, and you can refer to it as we go along. But this idea, the sleuth in your book is just online, a little bit of a sad story going on in her own life with her mother and what have you. But this is happening a lot now, where people think that they might be able to crack the case. Armchair detectives, armchair citizen journalists, that's this kind of thing. So talk to me about that.
Yeah, I've become really interested by that over the kind of past couple of years. And I think about 8 years ago, there was a huge burst in podcasts and documentaries about, covering true crime.
Yes.
They sort of exploded, Netflix documentaries, these, serial making a murderer, all of these kind of things. West Cork, exactly. So these kind of, they really blew up in the kind of public consciousness. And we were all treating it like entertainment. But then there's this new wave, which I think is probably a little bit since COVID, since we're all stuck in our houses, which is people on social media, so Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and they are trying to solve murders themselves. So it's kind of bled from entertainment watching to, we all feel like now we can solve murders. And actually, a former detective said to me, everyone in the public thinks they want to be Sherlock Holmes. Yeah. They want to solve it on their own.
Yes,
Everyone thinks that they'll somehow get the glory of being able to, solve this thing and figure it out and become a hero. But actually, the really dark side of it is that I think people forget that there are victims involved.
Yes.
And they're treating it as this kind of fun entertainment for, for a Saturday night or whatever. And actually, I think, a lot of the stuff you see online when someone goes missing or someone dies is conspiracy theory, and it veers into kind of really horrible conjecture. And I think people don't often think about the fact that probably the families of these victims are also online seeing this stuff. So I think it can get into quite dangerous territory. I'm interested to see where it goes, but I am quite concerned about it.
I wouldn't be surprised. They think they're playing human Cluedo.
Exactly.
And with all the attendant worries that you'd have if you were part of the family against the victim's family. Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But as you say, I think it is that post-pandemic, there was a sort of people went a little bit, not doolally, I don't want to be cruel about them, but this sense that they could possibly solve the crime. It does sound a bit
just
the wrong side of deranged.
Well, there was I remember listening to a good podcast when tragically that lady Nicola Bulley died falling in the river, and there were lots of kind of true crime armchair detectives trying to figure out how she died at that point. And I remember the Times interviewed a man who turned up at the site and was investigating, going around looking at abandoned houses and searching the riverbanks. And they asked him why he was doing it. And he said, well, I want to be a hero.
Right.
And they sort of pushed him on that. And he said, well, I had a horrible house fire in my family and relatives died. And I think he felt so helpless in his own life that he wanted to do something to get control. So it's a tragic thing.
God, imagine as if they didn't have enough on their hands to try and solve this awful crime, then to have to kind of give a psychiatric assessment of somebody who's there with his mobile and an empty plastic bag.
Yeah, but that's the internet, isn't it? It sort of takes away boundaries. We sort of think that we can inveigle our way into other people's lives on the internet, and you behave in ways you wouldn't otherwise.
Your interest in posh people getting their comeuppance intrigues me, because it's not, it's not too subtle feature in your books so far. Why do posh people annoy you so much?
I mean, the thing is, listening to me, you might think, well, she sounds quite posh, and so there's a kind of irony there. Maybe I'm sort of self-hating, but I think I'm fascinated by the British class system, although maybe it's the English class system more than anything, because I'm assuming, it doesn't replicate around the world. I'm fascinated by the fact that we all seem to, from birth, kind of know where we are in a class system that's invented.
Well, as an observer,
yes,
an anthropological observer, it is very much alive and well.
Right. Yeah, it really
despite
is.
what anyone might say.
Yeah, and people, it feels like you can't move up and down out of your kind of the space you've been designated. And so when I look at posh people, and I mean really posh people, I'm talking the super, super rich, the ones with castles and 7 last names. I just find it fascinating. They're sort of this ancient breed that, no one can seem to challenge. No one can shake them out of this. And I'm fascinated by what they do all day, really. I mean, what do you do? Do you just ride horses? Do you lie around your castle? I just think it's so interesting. And then, for them to get their revenge is just delicious. Really,
it is. Oh, God, we've so much more to discuss. We'll just stick around for a little while. Bella Mackie, our guest today, her new book is just terrific. What a way to go. Deals with all the things. Horrible rich people. Not that they're all horrible. Horrible rich people and armchair sleuths who just are a little bit out of control. Lots more to come. I thought the irony when you came in here in your running gear this morning.
I ran here because I've got to be true to the brand.
What happened? Did you actually? Are you being true to the brand, or did something happen?
Something happened.
What happened?
My phone didn't turn on this morning, and so I couldn't access my cards. So I had to run because I didn't have any money.
Is that right? So no cash in the house or the flat?
I know, and I couldn't find my bank cards. So you realise in that moment how reliant you are on your phone, and it's terrifying.
That is terrifying.
Yeah,
so what? You get to go to the ATM and get some cash out and just have it in standby?
Now I'm going to. Yeah, now I'm going to do one of those things. I have money under the bed. Like one of those
one of those
like
older
a crotchety
people.
Old grandma. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do.
So, how many miles did you run?
It was 8 kilometres.
God, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Not that congratulations,
Again,
but good
very
go.
much on brand. So
very much on
living
brand.
my own values. Yeah.
I like that. Because when you wrote Jog On, you did it. You say you did it to kind of try and kill off a lot of things that were bothering you psychologically and emotionally, without getting into all of that again, because we have other places to go. Has it worked for you ultimately? Yeah. I mean, and you still keep it up. So what's do you have a point a day you'd like to do 5K, 10K a day, or is it more? Or?
Do you know what? It used to be that I felt like I had to do 10K every single day, especially in the pandemic when, as you say, we all went a bit doolally. I was sort of thinking I need to do 15K a day, and I've broken myself out of that, and now it's just what does it feel like today? Maybe it's 5, maybe it's 4, maybe it's 7. Doesn't matter. Today, obviously, I knew I had to do 8 because I looked it up and I thought, right, that's the distance. But normally it's kind of as long as I'm enjoying myself.
And it's worked for you. I must say I took it up about 18 months ago, whatever, the little 5Ks, and I do enjoy it tremendously. But I do think that I divide it into one day it could be a gazelle, and the next day it's like quicksand. So it depends on where you are. You know the score. Okay, true crime. I want to ask you a little bit about Victorian true crime, because not everyone will. But I don't know if you read the Mr. Witcher. Those and
yes,
these,
brilliant.
They're great fun, aren't they? Tell me about your interest in that.
So I think, we were talking just while the song was on, not to ruin the magic for anyone, but I think there is something about Victorian crime where you think, I'm not hurting anybody. I can imbibe this stuff without...
Because it's so far away.
Exactly. Yeah, you think think you're not sort of hurting a victim's family. And the Victorian crimes are interesting because it's kind of before, DNA and all of these things, CCTV. So you're looking at quite old-fashioned ways of killing people. There's a lot of poison. Very interesting.
They loved arsenic poison. And laudanum.
Oh my goodness.
Was the drug of choice.
But imagine how easy it must have been to kill someone.
Easy. They put it into chocolate and everything.
Just everywhere. So, to me, that's fascinating. True crime in the Victorian age, to me, feels quite, it feels like different and a bit glamorous, which is terrible, but it just does.
But it was, and very nascent police force, I think, and people were suspicious. Who are these people snooping around, and what do they want? And detectives suddenly coming into that. They believe
detectives, exactly, the birth of the detectives.
Yeah, which I think there was some Latin word about taking the roof off, taking the roof off the house so you could look in, and suddenly it became this nosiness that people went, wait a minute, keep the roof on.
Yeah.
So there was great suspicion and skepticism, but that bled into Arthur Conan Doyle and Sherlock Holmes.
Exactly.
And then we're off.
And then we've got Agatha Christie, who's, the greatest crime writer of the world. For me, obviously. Dorothy L. Sayers, and then we move on. And then there's, fantastic crime writers now. You've got Val McDermid and Lee Child and all these people. So, I do think it all does spring from that,
Well, you're in there now, Bella. No, don't laugh. Just say thank you.
Okay, sorry,
you're
thank
welcome.
you. Yeah.
I did this too with my daughters all the time. You look beautiful. I don't want to just say thank you. Thank you. So I'm glad you did this.
Lesson.
It's not a bad one. So Victorian crime is great. And then you used to get a monthly magazine. Was it? I think you said your dad bought it for you or whatever. And I shared this with you, so I wanted to see if it was around. I'm older than you, but I just think it might be roughly something similar. Tell me about the one you were getting.
So I would get it. I think it was monthly, and you'd go to the newsagent, you'd get it, and then you put it in a ring binder.
Yeah,
and you'd collect all the magazines.
Yeah,
and they'd feature kind of modern day, or unsolved crimes. So I remember Jeremy Bamber being a big one.
I think I have it. I think I have it.
Do you?
I think I'm your fellow creepy person. Was it called the Murder Case Book?
I think it
yes,
might
it
have been,
was called the Murder Case Book, and it was like the acid bath murderer.
Yes, the acid bath murderer.
Yeah, and all these and the contemporary ones.
Yes.
And it kind of, I'd be sitting there as a teenager going, it was the gallstones. They didn't melt in the acid. They caught them because of the gallstones.
It was so brilliant. The acid bath murder sticks in my mind. It's one of those. That's always the way I think I would murder someone. Obviously, I would never.
Yes.
But that's always, I think.
Well, I don't believe that you would never, and also now that you've said it, we're going to head straight for the bath and find the gallstones. And go. Remember, Bella was on the radio; she was hiding in plain sight. But those magazines, right? Disgusting, brilliant magazines were. What does that say about our as young people? No wonder there was lonely times, but still.
But what does it say about the publishing world that they thought, we'll do a magazine about crime and we'll put the acid bath murders in, and you can collect them as collectibles.
Do you know what they were? They're also beautifully put together. They were so readable. If you're interested, if you're nerdy,
glossy, colour photos,
collectible, free binder. But I suppose ultimately it's getting sicker. But ultimately they were ahead of the curve because let's face it, if you put on Netflix, every other documentary is about she was a childhood sweetheart in high school, and then she went missing. It's all that stuff.
I mean, podcasts. If you look at the iTunes podcast app, it's got a whole category that's just true crime. And it's high up there. It's not fourth or fifth. It's up there.
Your book isn't going to hurt anyone, and that's why I like it all the more. You're just terrific. I can't wait for the next one. I know you're just fresh out with this one. Is it bubbling inside the head, or is it already started words going into the?
It is, it is. But give me a minute. Next year.
Okay, will you come back and talk to us about it? Okay, I look forward to it. Bella Mackie, it's lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
Congratulations.
Thank you for having me.